side it grows below the upper line.
So, and welcome to another episode of Rebel City Podcast. This week's guest is Kieran Burns. How's it going, Kieran?
I'm good, mate. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Not at
Nice
all,
to see
mate.
you, man.
It's all good. It's nice to meet you, man. Fellow podcaster. I think we have got to be the number one Scottish podcast for having other podcasters on our podcast, Matt. What do you think?
I think we like to get meta, don't we? Podcasters Union and all that.
Absolutely. Just before we start, by the way, like, I'm not sitting in like some sort of like ceremonial robe. I'm cold, so I've got like a blanket wrapped around me. Saying that to Matt, like, I do counselling and CBT with people, and I always say to them, I'm not in a robe. Like, it's a blanket. So how have you been,
the
mate?
truth, you're a kid not to be a Jedi.
I've been a bit unwell this week, to be honest, because I'm still getting used to the podcast game. It turns out to be a bit more stressful than you first imagined it being. But no, I just we went to a weekly there recently, so it's been a bit constantly thingy, and it just kind of caught with me this week when I got a bit of a flu, so I've had to kind of take a step back for a couple of days, but I'm back in it now. It's
always the joys of being weekly, man. Like we try and stick weekly, but I think over the course of lockdown, it's more like 10 days-ish, isn't it? You know what I mean?
Aye.
But it's a lot of pressure to take on when you've actually got like a life to be. Like, I also now need to do this every week.
Aye, it's kind of weird to be on another podcast, to be honest, because I've been so used to being the one asking the questions and shit like that. So you just kind of get in the habit of your format and your routine. So being on someone else's podcast was kind of, when Paul asked me, I was like, oh, I don't know how that's going to go, but here we are.
And it's always interesting to see somebody else's process. I remember when we went to, was it drunk therapy? Where, as we've done today, we just come in, have a wee 5 minutes and then hit it, and then 5 minutes after and we move on. But then we were like 2 hours sat with the guys at drunk therapy before we even went into the studio, and I was just like, this is different. We've got that quite a few other places. Like,
Aye.
But hopefully you'll be comfy here, man.
No, I feel good. I actually am a big fan of the podcast. It was quite fun when I asked to go on it. I was like, I can't believe that. I was listening to it well before I created my own one, so it was pretty cool.
That's fucking awesome, dude. Thank you very much, man. So, All About Ability is the podcast. What was your inspiration for starting a podcast, first of all, mate, just to get us going?
Well, it's kind of a long-winded story, but to try and put it into the simplest terms, I'm in a wheelchair. I'm a wheelchair user, and I'm with cerebral palsy. And All About Ability is kind of a pun on disability and how the kind of perception of disability affected me from a young age, and what I thought I could do, and the things that I thought, I didn't really think I could do much, because disability is like perceived as this sort of like, if you're almost like seen as this broken person. You're not complete because you can't walk, or you can't see, or whatever the case may be. So I looked at all the different podcasts that are out there and all the different things that people are talking about, and I just felt as if disability wasn't really in the conversation. So I gave it a go, but the actual idea came from being on a Football for All, this program called the Football for All Leadership Program, which is based in Lisbon for a week. And
wow.
So you go there, and the whole reason why I got into it was because of the European Publisher Football Association. And the European Publisher Football Association is this game called Publisher Football, which is like 4-a-side in these power chairs, and it's kind of like basketball, only it's basically 5-a-sides, only it's got a wee couple of different rules because of the fact that you can't have, if I go towards you in regular football, right, and you come to me, and it's like, you can take on to a few guys to beat them, but if 3 wheelchairs are charging you down and you've only 1 wheelchair, you get no chance.
Aye.
So there's a few different rules to it, but so they wanted me to go on this course, and to get accepted at this course, they had to come up with an idea. And my original idea, which is based around physical and mental health, because of the fact that through playing, wheelchair football, I've been playing it for like 10 years, but when I started playing it, I was obviously really young and didn't really know anything about anything. And as I got older, I started to realise the reason why my performances got better was just through getting fitter and getting more mentally stable and seeing all these things and dealing with the, like I said earlier, the kind of perception of disability that I had in my head. And so through dealing with that, I started to see younger people come through with similar problems, and also just seeing how all these sports that are getting more coverage, in this kind of fight for equality that you're seeing throughout the world. Everybody's asking for equal pay, and I'm just like, can we get some coverage? Can we get some, can somebody, show us in a different light? It's not just about the Paralympics every 4 years, for fuck's sake.
Aye.
So for me, it was like all about trying to give these guys some sort of platform to where they can learn how to deal with these things and deal with this disability and try and relate that to the mainstream audience as well, which I think a lot of disabled bloggers or podcasters or whatever have you don't understand the need to relate it to the mainstream media. And I think that's part of the reason why the coverage is so low, is because we don't, not enough, every minority group that's ever spoke up and done anything was through them doing it themselves. So it wasn't white people didn't end slavery. Do you know what I mean? So we as disabled people need to stand up, well, figuratively stand up, of course, and just start saying, like, look, we deserve to be in this discussion at the very least. By no means am I saying I should be getting paid the same amount of money as Cristiano Ronaldo for playing wheelchair football, but like, give me.
Nice though.
It would be nice enough. But it's just like, give us a chance. You know what I mean? We're not even like, even in podcasts, even in like the big podcast agency, when do you ever really see anyone with a disability on it?
Aye.
I'm struggling to even think about
exactly
like a single case of like listening to somebody. Like, it's always the sort of, I don't know, like when you think about like people that go on podcasts, especially like for sport, it's always like the sort of top end. It's never really the sort of
like
it's
grassroots.
not the grassroots. That's a better way. I was going to say, I was trying not to say the lower end there, but the grassroots side. What kind of is there a league or anything in Glasgow? Like, I'm just intrigued about like wheelchair football. Is there like plenty of it going on?
Yeah, it's definitely grown since I first came into it, but now there's clubs in Dundee and there's clubs in Edinburgh, Glasgow, Cumbernauld, all these different places, Ayrshire, and there's more coming in as well. So there is a league that we do every year. There's a league, a Scottish Cup and a League Cup, and I just won the MVP, so I'm going to mention that just because, why not?
Might as well get it in there, man.
I
was trying to resist the humble brag when we were like, we don't know any other podcasts that have had disabled people, and I was like, we have, but again, we'll let Paul edit that out. Other than this, obviously.
No, I'm leaving it in. Mate.
We're woke.
You're talking about like the perception, like the majority of people have, like sort of disabilities and disabled people. Do you feel like that perception was something that you came to yourself through like consuming TV media? Because when I think back, I mean, I'm a good bit older than you. Like, I'm 37, and I mean, when I think back to like the TV programs and the movies that I watched when I was younger, I mean, in recent years it's different. There's a notable difference, but I don't really remember anybody with disabilities being represented in sort of mainstream media when I was a kid, even a teenager. So do you think that the idea, the limiting idea that the perception of what disabled people are capable of comes for that, or do you think that it's something that you sort of happens to yourself, like psychologically?
I think it's a bit of both, probably. I mean, you're right in what you're saying there. Like, the thing about that is we're kind of told to hide in the corner. So we're not out there, we're not seen. So you almost don't even know. Like you say, I'd never seen anyone on the telly or anybody for quite a while. As ridiculous as it sounds, I thought I was the only guy in the world in a wheelchair. Because I went to a mainstream school, didn't get involved in sports, but anything with disability till I was about 15 or something. So, there was no sort of there was nobody around me to say this is how you. And also, see, to be honest, I didn't. But then, so that was the kind of coverage part of things where you don't see people that have it, and then the other part of it is your own sort of experience. And in mine, I didn't even know there was anything wrong with me. Like, and wrong with me is the wrong term as well. It's not even. It's just different. But,
Yeah.
Like, what I'm trying to say is, I thought I was just the same as, because see, if you grow up with that, and I've been in a wheelchair all my life, so for me, it's like, it's just normal. It's just a normal thing, and so you don't notice anything different until the world kind of puts it in your face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's going to be quite, I mean, if you talk about school days, I mean, looking at your Twitter feed for the podcast, like, it's pretty clear that you find sport and, you know, sort of physical activity, like, quite empowering, like, something that you obviously take something quite meaningful from. Like, when you take it back to like school days, and were schools even equipped to provide that type of outlet to like disabled people? Are they now? Is it something there's been any progress on? Because, you know, I think one of the things that we could potentially use to push back against that notion is to actually show how physical and sport and activity actually empowers people, rather than highlights what they're not capable of doing. You know what I mean?
Definitely, I couldn't agree more. And schools are terrible for it. I went to a mainstream school, and the one thing I wanted to do was I wanted to get PE, and I was always into physical stuff, but I just never had an outlet for it. And thus sort of just because they don't. When you go to a mainstream school, especially, they don't really know what to do with you. Nobody's particularly trained in what the do's and don'ts. It's the people that are trained as well. They don't. I don't really feel as if they're trained in the right way, in the sense of like they just like they have this assumption that you can't really do anything. And so for me, it's like I can come off my chair and go on my knees, and I do a lot more workouts on my knees. And it's like the way I like to describe it is everyone crawls and walks. I just never stop crawling. Do you know what I mean? So
fair enough. Some of those videos I've seen where you actually working out on your knees are pretty intense, man. I mean, I would easily argue that, you know, outside this, you know, normal disability, like, you're in much better shape than I am. You know what I mean? Like, I would not have lasted some of the drills I've seen you bashing out on that Twitter feed. You know what I mean? Like,
and that kind of makes the point of like, what does ability and disability really actually mean? And like, you know, disability is like this man-made, like, you know, we created it.
aye.
It's not being able to walk that makes me disabled. It's the accessibility that makes me disabled.
Aye. It's harder to interact with the world in some respects.
I mean, it definitely is, especially the now, man. See,
but that's knowing you.
Yeah, I've known people for like exactly like you have to know. If you don't know, then how you're going to do it about it, and that's one of the big problems. Is nobody really knows about it. Do you know the many people I've met that have said to me like, I didn't really think about this until I met you, and now that I've met you, I think about it, and so that's what kind of made me go, I need to start saying something about this. But the schools and all that, the thing with the schools, right, is I was really wanting to get. And the thing is, if you're sitting down in your chair all the time and you're not doing any physical activity and you're not doing anything like that and you're not walking about, you're just sitting down. So really, in actuality, you're always just doing nothing. You know what I mean? Which is inevitably going to end up in an unhealthy, more disabled state than you were before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And have knock-on effects with things like your mental health beyond what you're already maybe potentially going through at that time as well. You know what I mean? Like, sounds mad to me that there's no area of focus on, you know, getting, you know, quote-unquote disabled people active at that level.
Yeah. I mean, my mum fought for it. She was an animal with the school teachers, man. But the PE department weren't a big fan of me. But I would always say these ideas and say like, I can do this and I can do that, and I would go and I used to play football on my knees in goals. So I used to be the goalie because that was before wheelchair football existed. So I was like, fuck, that's how I play football. So I just threw myself. You know, I didn't have the greatest technical ability, but I would throw my face in front of the ball, and people loved that. So I would say to them, I can play football, I can do this, I can do that, and they would be like, oh, but see, because we're not insured for this, that if something happens to you. And that really bothered me, because I'm like that. Why is there more likely something's going to happen to me than anyone else in your class?
Aye.
And I understand it to an extent, but the lack of wanting to do anything about it was shocking to me.
Yeah, not even listening to what suggestions that you've got to try and sort of like get you active and stuff. Whereabouts did you grow up, Kieran?
I got Bishop Briggs in Glasgow. Just I've been here my whole life, lived in the same place, and it's you kind of. Only the past few years I've started to look at the outside world and see how a lot of the things that I felt when I was younger dealing with this stuff isn't really as uncommon as I thought it was, and trying to actually do something about it and make a difference and help people through these things. But it's because of that stuff in school, I never really got into doing anything active, and so there was never any sort of structure to my life, but whenever I did anything active, it was always felt good. It always felt like I was doing something good. So, but I never was educated on the importance of it, why I should be doing it, and how I should be doing it. Which resulted in me going through a really tough time in high school, where I just got really overweight and really depressed and not in a good place, because it was all just about trying to get social approval and desperately wanting to be normal and be one of the guys.
Yeah. How were your peers like growing up? We spoke to Aaron. Is it Aaron Wilkie? Mm-hmm. He's got a disability himself, and I was really surprised to hear him say how his peers were really inclusive with him, because when I grew up, me and Matt grew up in East End, we went to St Andrews, and any sort of, and it's not even just guys that had, or guys and girls that had disabilities, because there were people like that went to our school, but any difference, absolutely any difference whatsoever, whether it be like the trainers that you wore, the clothes that you wore, the music you listened to, it was always like sort of honed in on and sort of picked on a wee bit, do you know what I mean? But what was your own sort of personal experiences like growing up and your peers and attitudes towards your disability?
Well, what's quite interesting about it is in high school, I will say this: the boys and the people in high school, they were nice, they were good people, because you realise that more looking back, how we were just all young and didn't know anything about anything really, and there was nothing particularly harsh done. But what happened with me was more so, like being sort of had a big sort of incident happen to me when I was about 15. Which I've went through a couple of times, but is I used to play for this football team that was they were so they're a physically the title was a physically disabled football team, but I was the only one in the wheelchair, so I went there. It was in Paisley. I went there and we trained, and I trained with them for 5 minutes. And we were like, we love this guy. We wanted to play, and I was like, brilliant. So that became a big part of my life, and I played for them for 4 years through snow and all sorts of, put my knees through all sorts of pain. And my knees are still good from that. Probably wasn't the best idea, but I just had to do what I had to do. And
so when you were playing for this football team, were you on your knees?
Yeah, I was on my knees in the goals.
Fuck's sake, mate.
It was 7-a-side goals. I was diving myself a bit everywhere. And
superb.
I'd like to think people, if you ask people that play with me, they'll say he wasn't too bad. Better than some of the keepers you see in the SPL these days, isn't it? But I played for them for quite a few years, and then one night we had this event. I'm about 15 now, so I played for them from when I was like 11 to about just before I turned 16. And it was a really interesting experience for me, because these guys were like proper main guys in a main locker room, and I'm just a wee guy coming in, not really sure about him, and just trying to play football. But there was an event one night where we had a game, and at the game I played quite well, and at the end of the game they say who's coming to the club night event thing that we're doing, because the team was coming down from England to play us, and they were having a wee event, and I was. Keep in mind that I'm the only guy in there in the wheelchair, right? So if there wasn't any access to this event, they could have just told me. And I told them that same day, I told them I'm going to this. But I turned up to the event and there was 2 flights of stairs going into it. And I was seeing my friends pure struggle down it and managing it, but I obviously couldn't do anything about it. And my mum was raging. She goes downstairs, she's pure shouting and all that. God knows what was said there. So we leave, but then I'm just like that. I said to her, it doesn't matter. I'll just go back and let's not make a big deal about it, because it was too big a part of. Because even though those guys in high school, they weren't bad people, I know that, but also I just didn't know how to fit in or what I was supposed to be doing, because it was more so the teachers, to be honest. That made me remember that as you were asking about it. Like, the teachers were the problem, because the teachers were so scared of anything happening to me, because they were like, if something happens to you, you're liable and all that and all this.
Yeah.
But so I would go through lunchtime and have like a support assistant teacher person follow me a bit, and would have lunch with me, and they would follow me about everywhere all the time. And I was like, how am I going to make any, like, nobody wants to sit next to the guy that's sitting next to the teacher all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're in a wheelchair, you're not made of glass.
Yeah, exactly. So it wasn't so much my social group that was the problem, and kind of not let me be part of it, but it was more so the teachers and the education of it kind of put that barrier up for me, which, they obviously didn't see that at the time, and there was nothing. I didn't have the wherewithal or any kind of, like, I'm just a wee guy going through high school. I don't know what's going on. I don't have the guts to challenge the teacher. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just sort of played out this slowly, and I got out there as soon as I could.
I think it's quite good that out of all these experiences, obviously, has come this platform that you now want to, sort of share what you've learned for these situations with other people. I mean, in terms of, obviously I had a wee look prior to talking, but like, what guests have you had in the first couple of episodes and what have they been talking about?
Well, the 10th one just came out today, and I'm honestly kind of chuffed with the lineup that so far. I couldn't believe we got this Australian boxer on, Ebony Bridges, and she was brilliant.
Yeah,
she's fighting for the belt now as well, which is crazy. But there was her, and all the podcasts have similar themes. But what I've tried to do is make it as diverse as I can, and there's more. I've got a lot of different kind of people coming up. I'm really excited for the next 10, but. In terms of what we spoke about so far, it's been about like how you come through adversity and deal with your mental health problems and physical activity. And there's been people with disabilities. There's been mainstream athletes. There's been professional footballers, boxers. So I'm really happy with the way it's going, and I honestly get a great feeling from it. See, when people say to me it's helping them, this and that, that's exactly why I'm doing it. I hate the sound of my own voice. Do you know what I mean?
Don't we all, mate? Don't we all?
So, like, if I was doing it for myself, there's no way I would be doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I really like the look at this week's story. Actually, she was a ring girl, and now she's contesting a world championship.
Yeah.
That's a pretty, epic story in the context of that particular sport. Like, have you got a favourite so far? That if people were going to go with an episode, would put you on the spot here.
Well, in terms of, I would say the one I would want people to hear the most would be the one I done with Mick Scarlett.
Okay.
He's episode number 9, and the reason why is because, I sit here and talk about disability and all these things, and you kind of think you know a lot about it. You know what I mean? And I'm talking to him, and just the way that he was putting it, for me, it was like some of the things he was saying. I'm like, that's such a great. I've never heard anyone say that before. So the way that he spoke about the perception of disability, and how, but not just that, how to change it, was really kind of eye opening to me. So if there's anyone that I want people to hear, it'd be the one with him, Mick Scarlett. He was brilliant.
Awesome, man. Awesome. So, it's Mental Health Awareness Week. Or was it Mental Health Awareness Day yesterday?
I think it was day. I went a day early with the tweet. So I sent out a tweet on Friday because I seen somebody else tweeting. It was all right, cool. I knew that was coming. Obviously, quite closely follow guys like Brothers in Arms and stuff like that. And I put the tweet out, and then I got up on Saturday and had a look at Twitter, and it was just all. And I was like, "Fuck, man! I'm like the only guy on the planet that went a day early." But at least I get in there first. You know what I mean?
That's it. Got in there first. But have you, when you were growing up, did you have disability? Did it contribute to like poor mental health? And like, what is it that you've done to try and like overcome that, like in your adult life?
Well, 100%, it definitely has, and like, there's a lot of different things that happened, but just to finish that kind of story about what happened with that team, basically the way it ended was I turned up to football training the week after it, wanting to just forget about it, and as I'm pulling out the car, two coaches, I'm early for the change, and two coaches see me, and they run past me and run to the door, and I go to the door, and I'm thinking they're just getting balls or something. I go to the door, and they're like, "We're just as robotic as you could ever imagine." They're like, "We're sorry to inform you, you can't play for the team anymore because you're not ambulant enough. You're not physically ambulant enough." And I'm like, "That I've been playing for the team for 4 years. What are we talking about?" And they're like, "That I'm sorry, but we just can't accommodate you anymore. And but you know, if you want to go say bye to the boys, you can do this session." And I'm like, "That." I'll be honest, I didn't say a word. I was just completely, I couldn't believe what was happening. Yeah, it was probably, it's one of those moments you just don't forget because had such a bad effect on me. It started early drinking, which was something that I really contribute to having bad mental health at the time.
Right.
Was after that was the only thing that was making me happy or giving me any sort of independence. So when it was taken away in the most kind of harsh way possible, my 16th was a week later, and I just remember getting absolutely steaming. And almost every weekend, most days, I was just drinking from 16 till about maybe 19.
Right. Do you remember, was that because when you were drinking, you just kind of forgot about it and just disconnected?
I think it was more just because I wanted to feel numb. I just wanted to feel nothing because I just felt as if, this is obviously quite deep, and I'm sorry if this is too much, but I just didn't. I felt as if, like, usually you would hear something like that and you would internalise it as, what the fuck's their problem? Like, obviously it was their fault. Obviously it was nothing to do with me. I recognise that now because I've went through it all and sorted it. But at that time it was just very internalised and a negative way of being like, this is your fault because you can't work.
I mean, it's got to be hard not to have felt like that, even though thankfully hindsight has shown you otherwise, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I don't think I'm the only person in a wheelchair with a disability to feel like that. In fact, I would say that probably every person with a disability has felt like that at one point or another. And then for me, it was like, it just felt as though I wasn't able to do anything, or I was never going to, like, even with people with disabilities, I couldn't fit in. Do you know what I mean? So
Aye.
I just felt there was a deep sense of kind of sadness and pain that I had at that time. And I was just looking for any sort of, like I say, fitness hadn't come into it because I had no idea about it. I wasn't educated on it. Nobody had showed me any sort of pathway of what to do. Football was the only thing keeping me active, and then that was taken away. So I just started drinking heavily, and that kind of led to a sort of I would say make a break moment when I went on holiday with my pals a few years later, and in those years I had just been drinking non-stop. I'd gotten really overweight, and I was constantly just, every joke I was making was a really harsh joke about me being in a chair, like, and it was something I never really noticed until I look back on it and go, you were really, I was always making myself a brunt of the joke.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it was never something I had noticed until that, but we went on this holiday, and I'm sitting, like, the last day of the holiday, they had to do things for me and stuff that I just felt as if I was really weak and all that, and not enjoying myself, uncomfortable all the time because I'm bursting out the chair and I'm overweight. You know what I mean? And I'm sitting on this beach, so I go from the chair onto the kind of sunbed or whatever you would call it, and I'm lying there and I'm sweating profusely because it was dead hard for me to transfer from the chair, and I'm just not feeling comfortable at all, and hungover to the highest extent you could possibly imagine. I'm looking across the beach and I'm seeing all my pals, and they're all healthy and they're all smiling and they all look ripped, and they're all talking about how I'm going to go into this business course, I'm going to go and do it, you know what I mean? And I'm thinking, I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing after this. Like, my whole life for 3 years has been trying to get into this sort of group of friends, and not thinking about myself in any sort of way, and just totally hating myself basically. And if I'm being totally honest, I said this in the first episode that I done when I was talking about that exact same experience, and I said that I had like this moment where I was like going to go back and change stuff, but I never really said why that was. And if I'm being totally honest, the reason why was because I was thinking about family, and I was thinking about my gran, who she was my nana, which I always get quite embarrassed to say because people don't call people nanas anymore. But she was
really?
my nana. From like everything I say nana, everyone goes, she's like, I don't know you say nana for. But
Matt agrees.
I used to call my grandma Nana, so we'll be team Nana.
Right.
Team Nana all the way, mate. That's it. No, but I was thinking of her, and like she was 82 at the time or something, probably younger than that. And I just knew, like, she always had this undying belief in me from a very young age. Before all this happened, she would just say all these positive things to me all the time. And for whatever reason, I just knew that we had this kind of really deep sort of connection.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like that, man. She's not gonna be here for that much longer. She was healthy at the time, but I just knew. You just know. And I was like, is this going to be, what am I going to do here? Am I going to just sit and sulk and she's going to see this pure horrible version of me? And there was just a moment in my head where I was like, right, something just clicked, and then on the plane back, I was like, I'm going to join the gym because I'm sick of sweating all the time. So that kind of started me joining the gym, and then I didn't have a clue what I was doing. Came in, they had no. I think a guy put on my plan to go on the treadmill. I'm sure he did that.
Sorry, I probably shouldn't laugh at that.
That's insane.
But I mean, it was so. But the plan was so automatic and so like they were just so used to handing the same one for everybody.
Yeah,
they hadn't even looked at me, and I'm like, mate, do you want to explain to me how I'm going to do that?
Yeah, I think this is like a quite an important point. That people's like mental fitness or health and physical fitness or health, like, we're very, very good at just having this sort of cookie cutter idea of like, oh yeah, here, this is what you need to do. So like, you've managed to get your mental health back to a good place through physical fitness, but that is one of the sort of ways that it's almost like cliche to say that to people, is like, you need to just exercise and you need to just eat right, and it's like sometimes that doesn't work for each individual. Just like if you were going to go to the gym, somebody saying, oh, do 15 minutes warming up on the treadmill, they've not even took that extra second to consider your individual circumstance to go, right, okay, that's not going to work for this guy, and just give it a moment's thought. We do kind of want these sort of quick, easy ways of doing it. I just find it incredible that, like, if I was a PT or if I was a trainer and I got somebody that was in your circumstance, I'd be like, do you know what, I'm going to give this more attention, because it's like, could you imagine if you were a PT and you managed to like really help somebody with a disability, like help their mental health, get their physical fitness up, like what a good story that would be to promote you as a PT. You'd be like, I'm going to give them all for this guy, just so that like we can really create something unique, something different that I'm not used to doing. But unfortunately, they've hit you with 15 minutes on a treadmill to get yourself warm, mate.
I mean, the first few years was all me. Like, there was nobody that knew what to do, mate. I think one of the things you speak about there, right, and I think it's important to say this, is that a lot of these like sort of council gyms or whatever have you, these guys are not a lot of them was the opposite of what you just said. That a lot of them seen me and just seen extra work, like not just the workouts, but getting the dumbbells and setting up the equipment. There was a couple of people, I'm not going to name names because I'm not going to do that, but
of course
they were just not. Every time you come in, you could just see this sort of, I'm going to have to get this mat for him, and get a dumbbell for him, and get this and that. And I'm like, and you can just see it in their face, you can see it in the whole expression. And you're like, and it makes you feel awkward this is a big point as well. It makes you feel awkward to ask for help and to also go to the gym. Why do you think when you go to a gym you never see people in wheelchairs?
Well, for exactly the reason you've just explained, is that
I've never even considered it.
I would imagine that walking into a gym and experiencing a personal trainer who clearly looked at you as some sort of chore would be as off-putting as, like you said, showing up to a building and realising that it's like 2 flights of stairs. Like, I think you would have, a different barrier, but the exact same effect. You know what I mean?
I was already in a place where I was lucky to where I'd like got to a point in my head where I was like, regardless of what happens here, I need to start doing this. Like, I need to do something. So it didn't matter to me. It just was like, fuck them, let's just do it. But a lot of people that are in wheelchairs,
pretty much the answer to any issue is just to go fuck it, let's do it anyway. You know
exactly, mate. Like, don't stop giving a fuck what people think about it. Just do what's best for you. And I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, now there's like loads of brilliant trainers that I've mentioned. Like, there's a gym on every day, like Borden Street, Porton Das. It's called Everyday Athlete, and I really do think they're one of the best gyms in like the UK altogether.
Yeah, man. I used to work with Tommy.
Yeah, Tommy on.
Yeah, I used to work with Tommy back in the day in Virgin Megastore. He's a great guy and super fucking fit as well. like, and the guys that run, they're that sort of breed of people. They're no the type of guys that you find PTing in a pure gym or in a council gym. These guys live and breathe their fitness. Like, I mean, some of the stuff that you see during lockdown, Tommy was doing like breaking his PBs and like deadlift and squat in his back garden and shit. And you're like, fuck's sake, mate, like take a day off. But at the same time, he knows what he's doing because he's pushing himself, constantly pushing himself to be better. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, they are. I think that's one of these sort of special places where they're a premium. You're paying a lot of money to go there, but you know why you're paying that money to go there. It's because you're getting not only the expertise, and for these guys you're getting enthusiasm, and like they all seem to like love life and really love what they're doing. So they're an incredible one to watch. Sorry to interrupt you, mate.
No, you're totally right. Like, see, they're just always they're always just on and happy, and there's this sort of infectious good feeling you get from them all the time. And I remember my brother coming in one time, and because before it, my brother was like, "What are you doing paying that money for a gym? You could just join Pure Gym, or you could just join this." And he came in to watch a class getting me at the end of it, and he was like, I know why you pay it now.
Yeah.
You can feel it. You can feel it in the atmosphere, and that's something that I really take a lot of attention to, and realising that all that really matters is how you make people feel about things. Half the time, it doesn't really matter what it is you're doing or like what that kind of goal is in the end. It's all about like just sort of improving yourself in this process, you know. And in that process of doing that, you start to realise that making people feel good is the best thing you could ever possibly do.
Yeah, man. I think something that I was wanting to talk about earlier that just came back to mind there when you said that is that the thing that drives you to do your podcast is the helping other people. I think like you're doing amazing representing like disabled people in the podcast world. Like you're saying, there's very few people that are doing it, so like well done. But that's like a universal truth that if you can attribute other people to help motivate you what you're doing, you will do it 10 times harder than what you would if you're just trying to do it for yourself. And you said that with like your gran being your motivation for like your recovery, like wanting to be better, and something that you just said there, like we as human beings, like momentum is a huge thing. And as long as you feel like you're making steps, so keep like like I said, I'm a mental health professional, and the amount of my clients that I'm saying is that it doesn't, like you just said there, it doesn't matter what we do here. Just the actual fact that we're here and you're trying to better yourself, you're going to get something from that. And then you just need to take the same tiny steps every step of the way, and you'll just continue to feel better and better and better the more the momentum starts to carry you. Was there anything else that you did other than just the physical fitness to try and like sort of help your mentality?
Well, it kind of goes back as you were talking about that, it made me think of something you said earlier, which was, the kind of saying to people exercise. It is a cliche answer because you're like, oh, okay, and it doesn't work for everybody. And what I realised actually was, like, I was so so low down that it didn't. Physical fitness was the thing that sort of brought me back into the game, so it brought me back into life. But from there, I kind of learned that it wasn't enough, and it's not enough, and normally it won't ever be enough, because I got really fit and in good shape, but then I would fall back down again, and things would happen, and I would always be on these peaks and flows, and I wasn't able to gain that momentum that you're speaking about. And it was because even though physical fitness was helping me, I still had all these kind of mental, psychological issues in my head of how I felt about myself. And one of them was thinking that, was kind of relationships. I know this is sort of like a different turn to take, but I was very not, like, my confidence level in myself, for the idea that somebody could be into me, was so off the charts low that, like, that, in terms of how I see myself and things like that, there was still a lot of negative voices and negative things going on that I didn't really understand. But all I really knew was every workout I would do, after the workout, they would be a bit quieter. And I would feel a bit better for it after that. I've never done a workout and came out of it after that going, oh, that was rubbish. You always come out of it feeling good for it. Which is why I always try and make that one of my must-dos every day, is just get to do something active every day. But in terms of the mental side of it, like, I met this girl, like, shortly after, like, once I started getting into the gym, after a few months, my gran passed away, and it kind of derailed things a wee bit. And there was also, like, this thing of, I thought that I could be like a casual drinker. I didn't realise I had a problem with alcohol. So I would still be drinking every now and again. But every time I drank, alcohol is a depressing thing. Depression, that's what they say anyway. And for me, every time I drank, like, just one beer or one thing, it would just change the psychological thing in my head. So you could just say that I was a really big lightweight, but there was other effects to it, and
I think it's been pretty open in the past with my own experience with the drink, and the knock-on effect with, like, my mental health, and it's been a fairly sort of common theme across a number of guests. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's a cultural thing that happens in the UK and Glasgow, particularly when it comes to the drink. I think you just have to look at some of the reactions to, like, pubs being shut for a fortnight to understand that there's probably quite a lot of people out there with drinking problems that don't realise that they've got them. And the one for me, again, recently is, like, man caves. It's something I've had to mute on Twitter because I'm fed up listening to it. But, like, the notion that during a nationwide lockdown that lasts 6 months, people are so in need of alcohol that they go and build pubs in their back gardens. Now, that's something to me that is, maybe not everybody who does that has got a problem, but, like, it's something to me that is indicative of a wider issue that probably we have as a country with drink, and a blind spot for the impact that it has on us, because, I'm extremely conscious of drinking now, but in the past, as you say, it's something that was so easy to slide into, for a couple of drinks here to, really excessive and dangerous amounts within, a very short space of time. And like the fitness side of things, it's kryptonite to your mental health. You know what I mean?
Like, from my perspective, Kieran, like, you were talking a lot about, like, wanting to just fit in. And when I gave up drinking, I felt like I didn't fit in at all. Like, a lot of times, and people would mock you, would be like, "You sure you don't want to drink? Sure. Oh, how come?" The one would be, if you go out and you're like, "What you want to drink?" You'd be like, "Diet Coke," and they'd be like, "Oh, you're not drinking?" You'd be like, "I don't drink anymore," and it would be like, "What? What are you doing that for?" And it's almost like an affront to people. So I think like maybe when you've been that teenager, it's been a way for you to fit in with the crowd. It's like, oh, I'll get a drink. And that's been one of the very few when you've been that young that you've felt like this is my way to fit in. So then you start to make that association of like, right, I fit in when I'm drinking. And then it bleeds in to just normal life where you're just like, oh, I just drink. I just love a drink, or I just have a drink every night, and becomes the habit just starts to spiral. But you were talking about your relationships. I think you were saying that you'd met somebody.
Yeah, and so that kind of, I went into that very insecure and very like, I can't believe she wants to go to me. You know, it was this unbelievable thing, and that just it kind of became this very unhealthy thing where she was just as bad as me, really, like mentally, and we were both just needing to be with each other all the time. I became so uncomfortable with being myself, like almost without realising it. And when you talk about the drinking thing as well, like one thing I never really realised was how bad my anxiety was when I wasn't drinking. And you would try and go out and be social when you're not drinking, and you're trying to have a conversation with someone, and you're like, "Can I get words out?" Because your heart's, and you're like, "What's happening to me right now? I don't even know what's going on." So my way of going was, right, just have a drink. Just have a drink and it'll take the edge off you and you'll be fine.
Bit of social lubricant.
But I think that all comes from like you need to start to be comfortable with yourself, and like, but you only really do that by asking yourself the real kind of honest questions. And you asked me like two things that helped me like mentally, and they're really simple, but like as simple as they are, they're also really effective. Is I had this thing in my head to where it had to be me that dealt with it. Like, I was listening to this podcast when I was getting into fitness, and the guy's great and it's really good. I still like listening to him, but and he's a guy from America, like some big guy somewhere, and he was talking about how, because I was getting really into fitness and really gaining strength and confidence and stuff like that, he was talking about how, you know, when you've got a problem, you know, you can deal with that. You don't need, you know, you don't want to give negative energy to other people. You can deal with it in your own head. And I understood the premise of what he was talking about. And how he meant it in a positive way. I just took it the wrong way, and so I decided to think, you know, any time I was struggling, I was like, you can deal with this. I would do a workout, and after I'd be like, you've got this, it's fine. So I would not talk about things. I would really internalise a lot of things that was going on, to the point where it would build up into big things that would lead me closer to suicide and stuff like that. And so the biggest thing that helped me sort of relieve that stress and start to kind of clear my mind a bit was actually just telling people about it and be honest about it, and not be scared to say the word suicide, and not be scared to say that you were at that point. And I think once you start to figure out who you are, because the biggest reason why I feel comfortable like when I say to you the reason why is because I want to help people is mainly because of the fact that I've always been like a nice person that wanted to kind of give time to other people, but I always thought that was a bad thing. I thought it was a bit like, I didn't like myself for it, because the world would say to me, you can't be, you know, nice guys finish last.
Yeah.
One of the worst fucking sayings that's ever been created. Probably, tell you who created that one, bet you was a fucking scumbag. Like the guy.
Nacho Novo made that saying it.
Right. If you get do you not like Nacho Novo? I don't like him either, but
no, I just wanted to put a Avengers jab in there somewhere.
When you were talking about mental health, we spoke about disability in the past, like trying to, you know, gauge the impact that has on somebody's mental health, like body image. So you were saying that you never believed that there was a time where, you know, anybody could be attractive. This seems to be probably like the elephant in the room when it comes to men's mental health, is that as much as we talk pretty openly and regularly with all sorts of people, both online and offline, about mental health, like, I don't think that's something that as men we're ready to like properly talk about yet. So it's quite good to see that in your process you've been able to recognise that, you know, there was something there that you had to, you know, get on top of, and hopefully have actually, like, you know, got yourself to a place where it's not an issue anymore. Like, why do we have so little confidence in, you know, how we look as men? Like,
I think it's because, like, you yourself are harder. Like, you're harder on yourself than what the reality of it is, and in the sense of like you are your worst critique, and a lot of men have this thing of we're really, really in our groups as well. We can be really harsh on each other, and in ourselves, but also like for example, right? Even the podcast that I've done, I thought I'm never going to be able to do this. Like I've not got the confidence or this way of doing it to be able to speak this way. And the first like couple of what, because in my head I was like, I'm not going to start it till I know what I'm doing, right? But I think I think what guys need to realize, guys that think like this need to realize one thing, and that is that nobody knows what they're doing.
It's where we get back to just fuck it, just there. You know what I mean?
Like nobody knows it, and I listened to the first couple of podcasts, and I thought that they are terrible. Nobody's going to listen to them. And then people were like, "That was great. I really enjoyed that." In my head, that was terrible. So a lot of these things that you think are bad, like bad things or negative things about yourself, are actually quite good things. Like I thought, spending most of my time helping people, and not really. But the thing is, it has to be for a healthy reason. Like what I was doing was like trying to help people that I couldn't help, and there's a line between helping people, but also you also need to be honest about what's really going on and why you're doing it, and what's So I had my own sort of problems of like I say, always needing somebody there and never feeling like I was enough for anything. And a lot of guys have that feeling. And the main thing is just saying, look, everyone, like, it's not you. It's not just you. Everybody's got this. You have to just say to yourself, like, it's your voice in your head that's saying all these things to you about yourself is a lot harsher than what everyone else actually thinks.
Yeah, absolutely. Like the voice in your head is basically like your ego, and your ego is there to protect you. And the way that it protects you is by basically like leading you down a path that makes you want to do nothing. You just don't like you're saying, self-doubt. That's a protective mechanism that we've got that you can use because it's a feedback loop. So, but you don't need to take it seriously. Like you're saying, you don't need to listen to it. You can absolutely go against it. I mean, when I was going through my own sort of mental health episodes and recovery, I made this, and I don't recommend this for many people because, and you'll know why in a second, where I made a rule where I said, if I think something, I need to do it. And what I meant by that is, and I hated myself sometimes, so I'd be like, I fancy starting a podcast, and I'd be like, fuck, I'm going to need to go and do this now because I've got this thing that's like, at the start, to motivate myself, it was like, you need to do these things. You can't come up with these I'm a very creative person, and I come up with a lot of creative ideas, but I would follow through with very, very few of them. And this was part of my poor mental health, was that I had low self-esteem because I would have all these great ideas, but I would never ever follow through. I would always just doubt and talk myself out of it in the exact same way that you just said there, mate, that I'm not good enough. No, do you know what I need to do? I need to do more research. I need to do more learning. I'm not worthy of this. I need to be better, bigger, and then I can reveal it to it. And the actual key to it for me was like, no, do you know what you need to do? You need to just go and start doing shit and see what happens and be curious and accept if you fail. If it turns out that you're not good enough, if it turns out, then just accept it. So I had this whole thing about if you come up with an idea, you need to follow through with it to its natural conclusion. And like I said, I don't really recommend that for people, but see if you've got like low self-esteem.
It's extremely difficult to start next day as well, never mind go through it.
Well, unfortunately,
you're
sometimes
extremely driven. Aye.
Sometimes people like Matt, and I've got other friends as well, they kind of like get dragged along with it when I'm like, no, we need to do it. But then inevitably, me and Matt's relationship...
You're not dragging me about now.
Yeah, absolutely. But then the outcome of that is that my self-esteem gets boosted and I feel like I can do other things and I have more ideas, and then Matt's telling me this has been really good for me and my mental health, and then I feel great about that. And So there's been so much good stuff that's come out of it that it's actually immeasurable for me, and it just took me taking that chance on myself. And I think that's what you're talking about as well, just taking chances and taking small risks in your life to actually do something that might actually make you feel accomplished and better about yourself.
Exactly. I think as well, like when you look at some of the feedback you've had through your early episodes, I mean, people are clearly reacting to it in a very positive manner. Like, I mean, as I say, looking me up prior to sitting down today, like, it was just all praise, which was amazing to see. And I think reading through some of the comments, people were taking really different things. So it wasn't like, you were getting one type of really sort of common compliment. There was like loads of people finding loads of really positive things for the work that you've done so far. So there's clearly, a receptive audience there for it. So, you're on the right path.
I feel like my starting reason for doing it was for disabled athletes and giving us more of a voice, right? But I just went on, one of the biggest things I've taken from it, like you say, is you have all these different people from different walks of life, disabled, non-disabled, whatever, and we all, like, every single one of them have something they've been through. Everybody has a story, and so you start to say to yourself, hold on a minute, the biggest point of this is to show that the mental health and physical health and this stuff can happen to you regardless of your background, regardless of your race or whatever the case may be, or your shape, size. All these different people are going through the same sort of emotions, because there aren't any new. I'm not like yourself, Paul, I'm not qualified. I just speak from my experiences, but I'm not. I say to myself, like, there aren't any new emotions. We all can feel the same sort of thing. It's this game, this world, like this life, isn't a new thing. It's been a bit for a while, you know what I mean? And based on, by the way, also, I really relate to exactly what you just said there, Paul, about that kind of, if you say you're going to do something, you really need to do it. And I'm so like that. And when I don't do something that I've said I'm going to do, it really depresses me. I'm like, I'm a fucking idiot. I should have done that, you know what I mean? And one of the things that really helped me, and one of the things that I realised why that was happening to me, was because when you say you're going to do something, right, and you don't do it, and it's for you, what you end up kind of just not trusting yourself to follow through with something. And that's where the lack of confidence comes from, is if you know that you're not going to follow through with it, why would anyone else think you're going to follow through with something? And you need to have confidence in yourself first before anyone else has confidence in you.
Perfectly put, mate. I've got a question about like lockdown. Like, how did that impact you, especially for somebody like myself who, like, you should have maybe have mentioned this earlier, but I don't really talk a lot about it in social media, but I go to the gym 5 days a week and do kickboxing, do Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So my physical fitness related to my mental fitness is like paramount for me. But did it have like an impact, the gym's closing? How did you cope with that? Like, because obviously, like, it's different for, I think it's different for me and you, where I basically just went and got like a yoga mat and a couple of like dumbbells and just went, fuck, I'll just do squats in my room. Like, that's different for somebody that you maybe need a PT, you need somebody there like to sort of facilitate like the workout and stuff for you as well. Like, so how did you cope?
You know, it was really strange because my life is full of sort of distractions, and the, like, for the football, between the football and fitness and working and stuff, you're always doing something. You're always busy, and all of a sudden it was like the life just paused and said, take a back seat. And so, see, to be honest, the first couple of months of lockdown were great, because I really, for some reason, I was like, this is great. Because I had kind of messed up. I felt as if I'd messed up my pre-season getting fit for the football. And it doesn't really, like, people won't talk about it the same way I talk about it, in the sense of, like, it helps me perform better because I've got CPE, and it helps me kind of speed up my train of thought. So I thought, fuck it, let's get, we got 2 months now, almost, where I've got nothing going on. Let's just get into create a wee fitness space, get a wee hand bike, couple of dumbbells and just get tore into it. And the first couple of months I had done really well, and I got really good shape. And then it kind of carried on a bit longer than I think we all kind of expected it to.
Yeah, big time.
And I burnt out fast. So I was going to the gym twice a day, and both workouts were like 2 hours long. So it wasn't like I was...
Fuck's sake.
Yeah, I don't know. I've got to be honest with you, I don't really know what happened to me. It's something just... I got a bit between my teeth and I was like, we're going to fucking do this, right? And so... But what actually happened... I like to go swimming. And swimming kind of takes away a lot of my pain sometimes and stuff. So 1 week I went too hard. And I woke up next day in excruciating pain. Normally I wouldn't get sore from workouts because I would go to the swimming. And we kind of take it away, which is so. Speaking of that, anyone with any kind of disability, swimming is the number one thing you should be doing. But I was doing it, so I woke up in really bad physical pain. I'm thinking, oh no, and then I couldn't. Then because of that, I couldn't go into the gym that day. And when I couldn't go into the gym that day, I just was sitting. It was just too much time to think, too much time to self-analyze, and I turned the drink a wee bit again, just a wee bit, and kind of found myself falling into old habits and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, to be honest, lockdown was one of the best things that happened to me, because of the fact that I think I was able to address. Like I had a couple of really strong kind of meltdowns, like a couple of what my wee brother described it as a mental health crisis, and I've not spoken about this yet because I felt part of me feels like it was too recent to want to speak about it because you're like, don't worry about me, by the way. But so, do you know what I mean? Like part of you is like, I'll wait like a few months and then I'll talk about it so everyone knows that I'm sound. You know what I mean?
I think that's something that me and Matt have spoke about previously in this podcast is like the reluctance to share current struggles. It's definitely, it's not easy. I'm not saying it's easy in any way, shape or form, but it's easier to talk about stuff retrospectively when you can be like, I'm fine now. But me and Matt, so many times in this podcast, I've just been like, I've been struggling the last week and talking about our struggles and stuff, man. So this is definitely a decent space.
I mean, I think I spent the entire first year drunk before I was able ever to actually talk about drinking on the show. You know what I mean? Like, no drunk on the show, but like I was drinking in between shows and stuff like that. Whereas I think probably the first time I ever actually tried to like come to terms with it and get to grips with it was actually talking about it on the show. But again, you and I sit down in a room and it's just two mates sitting talking. I sometimes forget there's even microphones there, you know what I mean? But it's good that there's now that platform and that space for you to explore similar things. Like, I think, you know, what you share it's yours. So if it's too early, like, don't let us push you into it, man.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I feel in the best place mentally I've felt in a long time. And I put it down to that. Like, I had a lot of things maybe at the back of my head that almost you just don't have time to address because you know they're really deep and it's going to take you a while to go through them. And but all of a sudden I had the time to sort of, and I had a couple of things happen to me during lockdown where there was one particular night where it just felt as if all my insecurity, imagine you had a heat wave on your body of every possible insecurity that's right at the back of your head, and it just got exposed one night, like really strongly, to where I couldn't ignore it. Yeah. And then that night, my brother came out, and this was something that I was going to say earlier. Don't stop holding back tears, guys. Like, there was one really bad habit I had where I was just, there was so many times that I was just emotionally wanting to, like, let it out, and I didn't because I'm like, guys, don't cry. Men don't do that.
Aye, it's bullshit. I fucking great the other day watching Always Sunny in Philadelphia. So this is what lockdown has done to me, is that I seen the episode where the Phillies won the Super Bowl and it showed you all the fans celebrating on the street, and I was pure, I miss celebrating goals with football fans. Like, it was pure cheesy as fuck. It was like, but I think it does get to you sometimes. You know what I mean?
No, definitely. I mean, whenever I feel like I need to cry, I never hold it in anymore because I'm like, it's just damaging your whole thing. And for me, it was like in that moment when I was feeling all these things that came to the forefront. That night was one of the worst nights of my life. But because my wee brother he came out. I was in the garden and it was raining, and I'm just sitting there, like in tears, and he seen me, and he was going. I'm lucky that he was there that night because he was going to go that night, and he stayed. I don't know why he stayed. He stayed to see me, and if he wasn't there, God knows what happened. But see, when I got past that, what I was able to see was I was able to look at myself differently, and I was saying I now knew exactly what all these issues were, and I was like, right, so how did I start addressing them? And most of it was through just changing my thought process and saying the thing that I think is bad here about me is actually a good thing, and I'm actually not the worst looking guy in the world. Do you know what I mean? Like these things that you would say to yourself that you look back on, and you go, I can't believe I was saying that to myself. It's terrible.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say it was one of the best things that ever happened to me is because that was what made me able. That incident was what made me able to start the podcast. A week later, I recorded the first episode.
Oh, amazing, man. Amazing. I think that's something that took me a long time, and people that I engage with and I talk to them, and they feel like a low moment. So especially when you go on the road to recovery and you'd say you get 6 months, a year in, and you're like, I'm feeling great. And then something happens or something outside your control, or maybe even nothing happens. You just happen to feel kind of low and down, and maybe you, like you're saying, you maybe go back into old habits for a couple of days, couple of weeks, couple of months. It doesn't even really matter. Like, one of the main things that changed my perspective on that is that this is an opportunity to get even better. Like, don't dwell on the fact that you've slipped back into an old habit. Don't beat yourself up that you've had a depressive episode. Actually, like you, exactly what you just said, I'm in the best mental space that I've been in ever. So if you can work through this, it's just another wee bump in the road, and once you get out of that bump, you're going to feel even better, and then there'll be another bump. Don't think that there's not going to be another bump. There will be, because that is fucking life. But when you go over that bump again, the next one, you'll feel even better again, and every time you'll probably pick up a wee tool so that the next bump comes, you'll be able to go over it. So that's amazing to hear that. But a lot of people do get down on themselves when either they relapse, if it's addiction, or they feel depressed again. Maybe if somebody's been depressed, medicated, got off their medication, 6 months later, feel the depression coming back in. So you're not going back to square one. Yeah. Get over this one and you're going to be even stronger. And every time that you do go over these wee episodes, you're going to get stronger and stronger. So it's really good to hear that that's what happened, and it inspired you to do the podcast, mate. So it was worth it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
definitely.
You're never going to have like years where you don't have a bad. You're always going to have bad days, but it's just figuring out the correct foundation for you to deal with those things, and how. Like, I know when I feel a bit off it, I know 20 minutes on the bike, I'll come out feeling a different person, or reading or responding to a message where somebody's said to me, "This is help me with that." It makes me motivated to keep doing what it is I'm doing, things like that, and just kind of going on to it and say, not being, like you say, not being harsh on yourself. You're human. There's not a single person on this planet that hasn't been through a hard time. Like, I don't know about you guys, I'd never met anyone that said, my whole life has been perfect 100% of the time. Nobody said that.
This is true.
Maybe somebody on Instagram. Some influencers. I lead the perfect life. So, like, just as we're wrapping up, mate, because as I said, I need to be somewhere in 4 minutes. I need to leave in 4 minutes, which is going to be fun. But you were saying you're looking forward to the next 10 episodes. Like, what are you hoping, or what have you got planned coming up?
Well, it comes out every Sunday, 12 o'clock, and I don't really know why I chose that day or time, but I was like, Sunday will be a good day because everyone will be hungover. So Sunday, 12 o'clock.
So time to listen to somebody talk about recovering for being a low-key alcoholic. Exactly. That's my target. I want to help the alcoholics. So it's every week on a Sunday, and the next 10 I've got WWE wrestlers coming on. I've got a boxer that just won. You know, she's the world boxing champion. She just won a big, amazing fight
like a couple of months ago. She's coming out.
Nice.
She was homeless and is now the world champion. So it's a pretty cool story, that. And
Aye.
I've got a Paralympian who's won 6 gold. He's won 6 gold medals, and his story is just incredible. So there's a bunch of people that I'm really excited to talk to. And I've recorded the next 6 or 7 in the bag, and I've got a few ideas of doing one person and things like that. And I'm really excited about, because the thing is, I just want to make this as big as I can, because it became this thing where I want to dedicate myself fully to helping people as much as possible. But in order to do that, you kind of have to make it financially viable as well, you know. So that's where I started to really. I was doing it like putting on like a really solid 70% into it, and now I feel like I'm putting 100% into it. So hopefully there's good things to come.
Amazing, mate. Amazing.
Can't see why there wouldn't be, man. It's been great talking to you, and like look forward to keeping an eye out and obviously watching more of the shows.
Thank you. It's on Spotify and iTunes and all the usual stuff that you're on. But it's really great to be on here. I listen to this podcast all the time, so it was pretty cool to be invited on and talk to you.
Thanks very much, nice, mate. So it's all about ability. If anybody's wanting to go and anywhere, but I'm sure anybody that's listening to this knows where to find a podcast, for God's sake. But any podcast, Spotify, Apple, all the platforms. You do YouTube as well, didn't you? You've got like some videos on YouTube, all about ability, guys. If you want to go, it's a cracking podcast, and I think we'll agree. Like, you've been a great guest, mate. Good to talk to you, and thanks very much.
Cheers, guys. I really appreciate it, man. It was a great opportunity, and I've enjoyed it.
No bother, buddy. Cheers, bud. Thanks very much.
You show the fear inside, it grows below the upper line. Oh, you know you tried to hold you tightly by my side when all is crashing down. You'll never reach the surface, you live underground. Sky fire comes around when the steel rain falls to the ground. There is panic on the streets, a blackened sea full of shuffling feet. Sky fire, can't you see? You can try but you won't break me. It all alive is burning bright, and I won't back out. It's day to day, night to night. We have no choice who gets to roll the dice. You'll never reach the surface, you live underground. Sky fire comes around when the steel rain falls to the ground. There is panic on the streets, a blackened sea full of shuffling feet. Sky fire, can't you see? You can try but you won't break me. You and me. steel ring falls to the ground. There is panic on the streets, a blackened sea full of shuffling feet. Skyfire, can't you see? You can try, but you won't break me.